Welcome to Bridging the Education Gap, the podcast where parents, teachers, and education leaders come together to share insights, stories, and strategies that connect learning at home and in school. Whether you're a parent navigating homework struggles, a teacher fostering classroom breakthroughs, or an education leader seeking innovative solutions, this is your space to learn, grow, and collaborate. Each week, we dive into real conversations about education, from tackling pain points to celebrating success stories, all with one goal: to bridge the gap and empower every child's learning journey. I'm your host, Jessica Shelley. Let's get started. Today, we have a special guest, Brent Lockhart, a passionate leader with a unique journey that spans from teaching music to leading in administration. He's here to share how his experiences as a music teacher shaped his leadership style and how he navigated the transition from educator to assistant principal. So whether you're a teacher considering administration or a parent curious about the inner workings of school leadership, this episode's for you. Let's dive in. So Brent, you mentioned music has always been a huge part of your life. Can you share how that passion led you into education and eventually into a leadership role?
Absolutely, yes. So, yeah, music has always been a passion of mine. I think I've always enjoyed the creative aspect of it. I've always enjoyed singing a song and, you have to problem solve, or if you're sight reading music. And I always enjoyed that teamwork. So whether it was being in a choir, I also, coach soccer along with my wife at the high school level. So all of these different backgrounds that we bring with us, I think definitely help us along the way.
Yeah, and then you had mentioned as you got into education that then you decided to take some time away from education before coming back. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey? Like, where did you start? What kind of roles have you had? And what has that journey been like to get to where you are today?
Yes, I did. So education, like a lot of people, you go to college and then right outside of college, you're like, all right, let's dive right in. And for me, I was in a middle school and high school position. And so you're 21 out of college and you're instructing 18-year-olds. I think for some people, that can be very challenging. You're close in age and stuff like that. For me, that year, it was a challenge. I had, two different show choirs, different singing groups, and trying to learn all the ins and outs of all of that. And for me, I just missed the farming aspect. I grew up around that. My family's always had livestock, and we've also had acreage where we've had, soybeans and corn. I think you have to be true to yourself at times. And at that time, I just wasn't ready to get fully soaked into the education realm.
Yeah, and then can you tell me, so you started as a music teacher.
Yes.
So tell us more about maybe some of those lessons that you learned. You had mentioned, sometimes you have to lean into yourself and kind of understand where you are. So that sounds like a big key lesson as part of your journey. But were there any other lessons or things that you learned during your time as a music teacher that you carried over with you to your current position?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I was a music teacher. I had about a 7-year break, and then I got back actually into substitute teaching. My wife was like, do you miss it? I said, absolutely. I miss being with, the students, with the staff and all of that. And so I said, let's try it again. Got back into that role. And then after the substitute role, I wanted to get back into full-time. So I did get a full-time position. And while I was in that role, I just really felt like then I finally found my calling there. And I had always thought it was kind of a high school realm that I would be in, but I started in with kindergarten through 6th grade, and I really loved the younger children, the younger age.
Yep. So, what were some of those impactful lessons that you learned either from your time as a music teacher that you carry with you to your current role, or maybe some of those things that you've learned in your first couple of years of administration?
Sure, yeah. So when I was in the music role, I always tried and strived to be the best that I could be. And I also wanted that for my students. And I really feel that that's not easy at first. And sometimes you come in after a teacher and it's a great program, and sometimes you come in and it's not so great. Either way, each one kind of presents its own challenges. But for me, when I first started, some of the students would just stare at me in disbelief, and you could hear the moaning and the groaning, and that they would just be telling me that the music was too hard for them. And so I do think that there are times that maybe we set the bar a little bit too high, but most of the time, students and staff, for me, They will always surprise me with how much they can accomplish. And I think that we have to always be striving for the best.
Yeah, and it sounds like from this shift from building relationships as a teacher in your classroom to now setting firm boundaries as an administrator with maybe some more disciplinary sort of responsibilities has been challenging. But how have you navigated maintaining your compassion while also being firm with students and staff about those clear, high expectations?
That is tough. Yeah, I did feel in my role before that at some point you kind of feel like a celebrity and you feel like that lovable person and they kind of run up to you and they get attached to you. And then now in this role, they're like, I don't know if I want to be around that guy. I could get in trouble and stuff. But they start to learn your behavior, whether that's staff or whether that's student. They understand like this is not a big and scary person. Like I can come to them with issues as a staff member or even as a student. I can come to administrator and they understand what that role is and that communication there.
Yeah, so now I want to kind of like dive deeper into some of the impact that you've had as an administrator. And you mentioned that, your school operates on an MTSS sort of intervention program. So can you explain how you've approached improving that system and the impact that you've been able to see on students?
Sure, yeah. A lot of people will get a little bit confused with MTSS, so I'll explain. It's multi-tiered system of supports. What we mainly looked at this year was the academic side. So we were looking at the different levels of that tiered system. And at level 1, we really look at the instruction that's happening in the classroom. Level 2 is basically focused on the students that need a little bit extra support, but they don't really need that one-on-one. So level 2 is where we have our support staff, whether it be, retired teachers or instructional TAs. They come into the classroom. There's about 5 to 8 of those students, and they meet with them for 30 minutes every day. And then when they get into level 3 of the tier system, they also have the level 2, but then they will have groups of 3 or less. And then they meet with that staff member there.
And is that to focus mostly on like the core subjects, or can you tell us more about what's actually happening in those groups?
Absolutely, yeah. So the level 2 is a lot of that focus is with the tier 1. And so a lot of that might be reteaching, right? Or it might be something similar to what's going on in the classroom. And then when it gets to tier 3, now you're looking at exactly where that student is. So we might have to go down a grade level or 2 to meet that student where they are.
So really kind of like help optimizing and differentiating instruction and the variety of kind of learning contexts that the tiers allow.
Correct.
So, I mean, as far as implementing, this kind of robust structure and tiered system across the school, I assume that communication is probably a big part of what you do as well. So what steps have you taken to improve communication with parents and also the staff that you have as you're implementing some of these programs?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's really been key to, I guess I'll try to get 2 different avenues here, but I think it's important to have staff that you trust in certain situations. And if they don't know everything, right, you're always there to help them. And then also with the other aspect of communication, I'm just still old fashioned. I think phone calls work the best. That way I can tell if they have questions, they're going to ask right away. I don't know how many emails I've sent out, and then, you think people have the information, but then it's not always there. I mean, we do use like Class Dojo with parents. We've really been pushing this year for a parent advisory council. And so to me, just seeing the parents and seeing their face and then understanding their questions, and then we can kind of have that feedback right on the spot, because I'm a big advocate for having immediate feedback.
And you mentioned this idea of shared leadership when we first connected too. So I want to dive into that because it sounds like maybe some of those things are what's happening as well. So can you dive deeper into what that looks like for you and your school building and how you've been able to focus on that to increase student outcomes or improve impact?
Sure, yeah. We have close to 100 staff members. I look at a lot of different individuals and they have different areas of expertise. And so you'll have one person that's creative, and so you may have them lead a certain aspect, of whether it be one committee or whatever. And then you have other people that, might be super organized. So I need you guys to kind of plan something far in advance. And that communication piece is still important in those areas. But I think we've done a better job of making sure that the people enjoy what they're doing, right? I don't want somebody in a position and it's like pulling teeth to get them there, start up the meetings for something.
Yeah. And then for educators, because you've made the transition from music teacher to, leadership and assistant principalship. So for educators who may be considering a transition into administration or taking on maybe a leadership or like a department chair sort of role, what advice would you give them based on your experience?
Don't be scared and go for it. And it's not that bad. Like, I mean, what people, they see the behavior aspect. And I think that for a lot of people is just it's a lot for them. They look at that and they're thinking, well, I can't do that. I can't handle that. Yes, you can. And that's not everything that we do. We have a lot of other things that we do, and you'll understand kind of that you can still be the person that you were before, and you can still put your own spin on certain things.
And then I guess on the flip side of that, what would you like to tell parents about the inner workings or behind the scenes of what happens at school and how they can maybe best support or set their child up for success throughout the school day or school year?
Yeah, I would always advocate for parents to get involved. We love to have volunteers at our school and to come help out. Even today, obviously, I can't get into details, if I'm meeting with a student or whatever, but some of the stories that they tell me, and I start digging a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper, then we find out, well, that first story was nowhere near what the actual story was. I know. And then on the flip side, I've seen, other things. So it's just important to kind of interact with a lot of different people at the school, even if someone really close, like I know this person at the school. And so, they keep me informed about everything, but it's always good to have different perspectives.
Yeah. And that's all kind of around that like stakeholder engagement, right? Around the child. Like everyone is well intentioned to help your child. And sometimes those communication lines are really what just needs to be strengthened to make sure everyone's moving in the same direction to help that child. So reflecting on your journey and the conversation that we've had today, maybe what's one of the most rewarding parts of your journey, or where do you see yourself headed in the future? And maybe any lasting thoughts that others can take away from the discussion.
Sure. I think just on my background, I think that, or I hope that people can see that life is a journey and you don't know where you're going to end up. And it's okay if you have to step away and take a break for a little bit. And I just want people to know that you don't always have to be, full of passion 24/7. Like there are days that I go into work that, maybe you're not feeling 100%, but you always give your best. You always do everything that you can for your staff and for your students. And just to be supportive, you will find out it's just very rewarding. And as far as in the future, I don't know what the future holds, but I would love to be a head principal soon. So we'll see. I don't know.
There you go. You have the impact and leadership all around. But yeah, Brent, thank you so much for sharing your journey and insights with us today. It's clear that your passion for education and experiences in the classroom and supporting students and educators, your dedication to leadership, all have truly shaped you into an inspiring educator and administrator that you are today. So to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Bridging the Education Gap. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and share it with others in your community. Join us next time as we continue to explore how educators and parents can work together to empower every child's learning journey.